אשתו בקולו בזמן קריב.
Mosho Fima, one of the manhigim of the community of Pinsk, is on the ground in Belarus, and he will...
Good evening, everybody. I feel it's a big privilege to be speaking to you from the city of Pinsk, just a day after the Levaya of Reb Chaim, who was here himself till the age of 8, like he said himself, and me being part of the many askonim that are out there trying to save as much of Klal Yisrael that we can save. It's very hard at times when one is so many thousands of kilometers away to try and understand what is going on, what the need is, and what are people going through. To be mishtatev b'tzal shel chaveroi is no easy feeling for anybody. However, it's already almost 24 days, approximately over 20 hours a day each, for the past 4 Shabbosim, being on the phone and being on the computer, which is hard in a regular matzav. However, when we realize the achrayus that we have and the race against time to save Klal Yisrael, it doesn't give us an option. It'll be very hard to try, when you're sitting over there where you're sitting, to try and imagine what's going on, but let me try and put it in a few words. Like I said, I'm only one of the many people out there. But even us, in a small way, we already managed to pull out over 4,000 Yiddin from Ukraine. To get men, women, and children out of the country. The average journey for such a person is over 20 hours, and that is just to get over the border. To help you understand what he means, very often he means a family is dismantled and they get on a bus not knowing where they're going to. And they can take with them on a bus the most minimal belongings. I saw a family of 7 that came off the bus with 1 carry-on hand luggage. That was all they managed to take with them to be with them, and they were the lucky ones. There were other people who came with bags from stores, and that's what they managed to take with them. We had old people just tomorrow morning, in less than 4 hours, there's evacuation of a 92-year-old lady. And in the same ambulance, since we packed them, especially these tough cases, there's a lady who is physically handicapped. And the message I got was less than 4 hours ago. I said, what's the story of this lady? I'll read in Hebrew the message I got. He batzmaneche, herself, she couldn't leave till now because she was sick. She's going to Eretz Yisrael. She would like to go to Eretz Yisrael to look after her mother, who's even more sick. Her husband is staying behind in Kiev in hospital. He's also handicapped. The doctors are not allowing him to go. And this lady, in 4.5 hours, will be on the way out to where? Besides her today, where we're speaking now, by me it's 3:30 in the morning. A bus left Chernihiv. A difficult case. Chernihiv is one of the cities that were under fire. It was a small bus that we managed to get out with 30 people. However, as they were pulling up towards Kiev, there was curfew, and they were put to sleep in a spot. With many of them just a rucksack on the back, and they were mekayim the nisayon of Avraham Avinu, lech lecha me'artzecha. But the Torah is so mishabeach Avraham Avinu that he was able to withstand the Yisroel. And these Poshet Yiddin, they're prepared to go ahead and do it. Very often people think, okay, I mean, we see many times statuses or other pictures in papers, but maybe it's not mamash war. This is the war according to Alec Dome they have. When I was learning the Megillah, Leil Purim, which wasn't that long ago, a WhatsApp message came in from a father in Eretz Yisrael who needed help. He had gone to Eretz Yisrael just before the war began. He received a message, and the message was a text in my WhatsApp. Ishti ne'erga. My wife was killed in Mariupol. Ima shli ne'erga. My mother was killed in Mariupol. Nishara li shtei achayot. I have two sisters left, aged 12 and 14, ben begil arba, and I have a son at the age of 4. I don't know how to get to them. Please help me take them out. Last night, it was confirmed. We got them out, not the one way, but the other way, in the city of Rostov, and the father's on the way to meet them. Another Talmud of ours that learned in the Mosho Yad Yisrael in Kiev many years ago. He was traveling to Zhytomyr, not far, and a Russian tank was coming against him. And as he stopped his car and tried and leave, the tanks killed the father, killed the son, and only the brother was left. There's a psychological warfare going on. Try people, the Yisroel, to leave behind the houses, to leave behind the cars, to leave behind the belongings, to leave behind the businesses, and just to move on to life. It's a big Yisroel. There was one of the families that were called me from America that we should try and persuade. We should try and persuade one of the nephews to leave. He didn't want to leave. We tried once, we tried twice. Today the message comes through. He's going to the army Wednesday. Maybe there's a way to get him an armored vest, a helmet, and shoes. The Nisyonis Yiddin are going through is something that we can't imagine. We can't imagine what it is to get over the border, to go and live in displacement camps. And there's many, many refugee camps. I work in Moldova, but there's others in Romania, in Slovakia, in Hungary, in Poland, where there's tens and tens of places. When each place is hundreds of people, they come there. And as they come off the bus, they sit there just depressed. Not one point they're happy, they're safe. But then what do you do next? And that is the mission that they have. And there's people out on the ground helping them in order for them to decide what to do next. And besides that, Solos the Foshes, Gashimi. And that is over the minute you get them over the border. But there's the rest of that Solos the Foshes that needs to be taken care of. Because imagine somebody saves a child from drowning in the ocean. And you take this child, you throw him on the sand. And when you take this child, you leave him over there. And you don't care, he could die from hunger, he could die from thirst, he could die from a sunstroke. These are the exact same situation over here. We can't just take them and pull them over the border and say, okay, the bombs won't be here today. Even a city like Mogilov Podolsk, which is one of the borders over there, where over there people said it's relatively safe. However, today when we're on the phone a few times during the day, we heard the sirens, and you get frantic calls from relatives, and so they just pull them all out and send them to bomb shelters. How can we find them? How many people tell us that the relatives are located in different cities scattered around Ukraine? However, there's no electricity there, there's no water there, and the batteries have died, but the last thing they sent them was a location. And when you take a look at Google Maps and you realize this is a 12-floor building and you have a point location, how do you take them out? And these are the nisyonis that the families that want. You have families in American Yisroel who are trying to do everything to save them. You've seen unbelievable hashgacha pratis throughout. It was Yiddin the Meister, one of the buses that went down from Kharkov. 18 people that got on the bus On one day they were meant to get on the bus the next day, and there was a fight over there. Why are you getting on the bus before us? And then in the house where they lived, this family, there was a rocket that fell in on the night, and that family saved their life. The nachas that we see, once people are over on the other side, and the good morning pictures that they send us are wearing talis and tefillin in shuls. The group of Kollel that came out, they were measurable. 93 of them came through Mamish, traveling through the whole Friday night. But within 24 hours from arriving in town, the men were sitting in Kollel, the girls were learning in Beis Yaakov, the kids were learning in Cheder, even though it was temporary, and now many of them ready to Yisroel. The amount of people that we see daily basis, literally reaching out, begging us to help to the maximum. And like I said, I'm only one of the few people, one of the many people out there. You can imagine the capacity over there. I told somebody, B'derech Tzachus, I never knew maybe this whole thing happened that we should reach out to the Yiddin, because the amount of Yiddin that are reaching out to us are a lot more than the Yiddin that we were reaching out to them before the war began. Every single one of you over here listening tonight, every single one of Klal Yisrael that's been reaching out daily to see how can they help the Agudas of Klal Yisrael, to help a Yid that they don't know his first name, they don't know his surname, they don't know his address, they don't know what he looks like, and they don't know if they'll ever meet him. This is a darg of Agudas that I definitely haven't seen in many, many, many years that have been in these parts of the world, and I've been here 27 years. Oh, grace to the Agudas, our grace to the international sharing community, and all of Klal Yisrael that are reaching out. But we owe special to the Canadian Foundation under the leadership of Reb Shlomo Noach Mandel, who didn't hear about Ukraine or about Russia or about Belarus only when the war began. He didn't wait until the war began to see how can we help Klal Yisrael. For the past 35 years, we're reaching out to people over here day and night in order to save these Yiddish neshamas. I'll just show you over here. These are just some of the wedding pictures of hundreds of these Russian mishpachas that began, and they are the ones helping us in our rescue process now, because they know the place, they know the towns, they have the contacts. I turn to each one of you and I ask you, obviously we need fillers, obviously we need rachmanas, Yisroel, and the vacuum that was created yesterday, there was a vacuum from Reb Chaim, like you said. He was born in Pinsk, he was here till 8 years old. I was by him a few times and he spoke. When he heard though about the stimulation, he cried twice in the middle of the conversation, because that was the Ahavas Yisrael that I had. The Ahavas Yisrael that I had, that any Yid that wanted to come, whoever the Yid was, whether it was tens of years ago, like we heard from his son yesterday, he would write letters to people just to give us the chizuk. I was one of those many people. He left a vacuum of Ahavas Yisrael that each one of us can go and grab. And each one of us knows how one can be chelik of this Ahavas Yisrael. My tefillah is that Kodesh Baruch Hu should say, Yom HaTzoreseinu Dai, and the next Shabbos, it shouldn't be the 5th Shabbos that we have to be Mechal Shabbos, it will be Mekayim Shabbos. But we should hear Yom HaTzoreseinu Dai, and we should hear that the war's finished, and we just give the Ruchnistik Klal Yisrael. And let us not forget the last chelik that we have over here. The chelik that even when the people are over the border, and even when we start sending them out to new places and they need to resettle, they need to relocate themselves. Could any of you imagine what it means to relocate? Every single one of you in the room, slept in the same bed last night, like you said, for the past few years. You went to the same yeshivas, and you went to the same kollel, you went to the same businesses, the same stores. And these people are in one place tonight, another place tomorrow night, and then they're sent off to a third transit place a week or so later, and then life begins. But once the war is over, we should not forget them, because everything Ahavas Yisrael.
We're still under the tsar of losing the Kollel Adar. Someone who Rabbi Yitzchok was Mishalshul from the doors before, someone who Mamish was completely out of this door, but there's a purpose for that. Masriyan, the halacha is that when the tzara comes, you're supposed to daven to the Rebbeinu Shloim. Fast. When a tzara like this happens, when people are every day in a skana of being killed, and every day they have to run away and go into a golus, there's a halacha Masriyan. You have to daven and scream to Rebbeinu Shloim. That's how we came together. KINNUS is called Yehudim. We daven to the Rebbeinu Shloim together. Just like all of us felt the tsar of losing the Kollel Adar, we all should feel the tsar of every person in Ukraine. Every man and woman, children. Their tsar is our tsar. By the Dreyfus, when they had the Dreyfus trial, and one of the anti-Semites came to ask the infamous question, Chazal say, Atam kruim Adam, lo yom esoilim kruim Adam. So they asked, you mean only Jews are human? No one else is human? So Meir Shapiro at that time told him to say, you know why Atam kruim Adam? Because there's many ways to define a person, Ish, Gever, Enosh. But Adam is the only one that there's no plural word. There's Ishim, Gvarim, Anoshim. Adam, there's only one Adam is Adam. Kol Yisroel is one Adam. If someone is hurt in Ukraine, we're crying here. If someone is, you see people dying in Ukraine, we are dying. If someone is suffering in Ukraine, we are suffering. We're all Adam, we're one person, we're one body. Kol Yisroel is called Adam. We're not different. So it's happening in Ukraine. What do I care here in Toronto what's happening in Ukraine? Because we do care. It's my foot hurting. My heart hurting. When it's crying in Ukraine, we are crying. And that's how we have to feel. We have to know that we are hurting. And I go and I fast. I feel their pain. Their pain is my pain. They're suffering, we're suffering. In the 40s, when our parents went through the concentration camps and went to Arbeitslager, and everyone was asking what happened, what did the American Jews do then? What did the American Jewry do for them? We know the famous march of the 500 Rabbanim who went to Washington, D.C. against the advice of the leaders, the secular leaders who held they shouldn't do it. From a Yid feels the love, feels the heart, and cares. We are the American Jews now. The Ukrainian Jews are asking, what are we American Jews doing for them? What are we doing for them? How are we saving them? What do we do for them that they should be able to get out of this sorrow? What do we do for them that they should be able to live? What do we do for them that they should be able to continue living? It's our acheinUkraine now. Mosho said, so the Medrash says, all of us together, we're all together in the world. But then we Lechem Koid Hashem, then we Zoichet Koid Hashem, then we Zoichet Koid Hashem. Born Reb Chaim, Ukraine Levracha, Seichet Tzadik Levracha. By him was Torah, Eis Torah Lishma, it's Torah Shachesed. The Torah by him was just to do Chesed. There's a story with someone. His Adam came over to him and told him that somebody came, that he's making up a collection for something. So the person asked the Adam, Shlita, that he should speak to Reb Chaim about it. So he spoke to Reb Chaim in the morning and led him in shul by the Vasikim Minyan. All of a sudden, 9 o'clock, they lived 3 floors up and it was hard for Reb Chaim to walk, and they hear someone knocking on the door. Reb Chaim came that he wants to give money to help this Moiset. He said, was hat der Rav gedacht kommen jetzt? Sagt, was meint ihr? Hat mir gesagt, jetzt hast du Yiddin was davon helfen. Sag, warte noch später. So I should wait for later. There's so many other things to do later. See, the first thing in the morning he ran to give him. It's not enough only to tongue. Are we giving? How much are we giving to help these people? How much would we give it be our own brothers and sisters? How much would we give it be our own parents? These are our brothers and sisters. These are our parents. We have to thank a person, Reb Chaim, Shlomo Noach Mandel, Shlita, so sein gesund und stark, that for years and years he was helping there, and he's now heading this help over here. And the biggest help is we're helping them in Gashmis and Ruchnius. Helping Gashmis and Ruchnius. Like someone said, someone who grew up in Ukraine, said when he grew up in Ukraine, it was a bizarre to be a Jew. You were embarrassed to be a Jew. Now, everyone wants to be Jewish, because the only ones who are coming to help, and not only Jewish, want to be from a Yiddin. The ones who are coming, standing by the border, they're from a Yiddin helping. Just imagine the Kiddush Hashem. They're helped. A from a Yid weiß, was meint zu helfen. A from a Yid weiß, was meint Rachmanis. A from a Yid weiß, was meint. And it's also an opportune time to save a lot of lives in Gashmis and Ruchnius. It's a time when they see what from a Yiddin are doing, to save them before others get them, to save them, to make sure that they go in the right places. So we gathered today first to daven to Rabbi Yisroel. Rabbi Yisroel, the acheinUkraine Yisroel, and soon the service will help every Yid in the world, and especially now in Ukraine, where these Yiddin are such tzaras. Please, Rabbi Yisroel, help them. But then Rabbi Yisroel wants last size with Afton Oichet. What do we do for them? What are we doing for them? Everyone should give as much as they can and help as much as they can. And do in every way. The Rabbi Yisroel will listen to our tefillas, and the Rabbi Yisroel will see how we understand. Once when there was a shayla of the Yaldei Aliyah they came to speak to Adar and Reb Chaim in the middle of learning, they came to speak about it, and he started crying, pouring tears were geese. What to do with those Yaldei, those children? And our tears should be crying for them. Every one of us should be crying for every person there, for every person in Ukraine, every person who's in Tsar. If we cry for them, the Rabbi Yisroel will listen to our tefillas, and the Rabbi Yisroel, like we just heard Rabbi Yisroel say, the Rabbi Yisroel will help that this should be a Shabbos full of Kedusha, a Shabbos that the Mechama should end, the Torah should end in Kollel Yisrael, and the biggest Mechama should be the Mechama Sim Yerushalayim, to be as Agudas and Mahara B'Yameinu. Amen.
This time we give a special Akaras Taiv to Rabbi Yitzchok Sorotzkins from Lakewood, who consented to give a drasha on video, especially for this evening.
I'm not sure everybody is aware of the gewaltige Tzore Gdoile that's taking place, Rachmana litzlan, in Ukraine. The people of Ukraine have, with Mesiras Nefesh Mamish, I've seen videos. We've heard the mention that are in charge of these areas, one after another, bring out how for years, for 20 years, 30 years, these are Yiddin that were Mamish Moiser Nefesh for Yiddishkeit. And today, Bin Rega, everything that they did has just became destroyed entirely. All the cities, the Moisdis, the Bati Sefer, the Beis Yankivs, everything that they built. Can you imagine just the Agudas Nefesh itself of how people put in so much work of building up these communities of Erliche, Frumme, Taira, Yiddin, that their schar is undescribable with how they're living in such trying conditions. And now the Ribono Shel Olam demolished everything that they had, and now they're in a situation of pikuach nefesh to such a degree we can't even imagine it, we can't fathom it. They come into these new countries and they have nothing. They escape barely with their clothes on the back. They don't have any food to eat. They have no place to live. They have to rent for them hotels, motels, give them food. You can't imagine the costs of kosher food, of supplying these can be, one Shabbos itself could be $50,000 in one single spot. It adds up to unbelievable sums of money per week. It's millions upon millions of dollars that they have to spend for these people. And then these people are in a sakona gdoila that all of them that became from in Mali Tshuva and the ones that are close to becoming from, everything is Rahman al-Itzlan going to be lost in 1 second because they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the schools for them. They don't have, they're displaced, they're broken, they're downtrodden. 50 people sleeping in a room and they're not together with their wives, with their children. It's such a terrible matzah. You would just see it. You would be brought to tears. You can't themselves. And then there's the sakona that missionaries are taking these broken people and trying to learn them to become Rahman al-Itzlan Christians by offering them free food and giving them other accommodations. They'll say, we'll take care of your needs, and they have nothing with them. They don't have what to go by. It's such a terrible situation. There's no words to describe this situation. There's no greater mitzvah than Hatzolas Nefoshes. These shluchim that are there are so undermanned because they had a lot of people fled the country. They didn't find a place where to go, and they left and they're stranded. A few individuals are left there to take care of hundreds and hundreds of people all by themselves with the little assistance. Rahman al-Itzlan, the situation, and they're begging and crying and pleading to us. And they're saying, have Rahmanis on us. Give us the assistance. Imagine if you would be in our position, what would you want? And you could imagine the tsar and Agudas nefesh of all these Tayrim shluchim that are being moiser nefesh, such eliki Yiddin. Their schus is undescribable for the arbeit that they were doing all the years with Mesiras Nefesh. And now in such an Eitzorah, the schusim are greater and greater. Any person who is mishtatev, bitzara, this is our chiyuv in such a situation. Reb Shmuel Dishon, he says, he would never have dreamt that history should repeat itself. He remembers when there was a matzav that if they had money, they would have saved nefoshes. Rahman al-Itzlan, Eichmann Yach Shemoy, the rosh said, give me money and I'll give you nefoshes. It's a question of dollars and cents. And he said he lived through that terror. And he never believed in his day will come a situation the same matzav. Money is a nefesh. More money is more nefoshes saved. Every male costs today over $7,000-8,000 just to get him over the border. So you can imagine when we deal with thousands of males, how much money we're just talking to the chelek of getting them over the border. This is the matzav, and this is our achrayus, and this is our schus. I want to share with you something from Reb Matisho. You know, the Mashgiach Reb Matisho said, if you study history, you know that there were times that were very dark in this history of Klal Yisrael. But then after that, it became a matzav of gula, a matzav of daylight. The end of the night is the darkest part of the night. And then after that, you think it got so dark, and who knows, we lose, we get despaired. But no, it's going to become light afterwards. And he says, I'm going to explain you what is the kavanah, why the Rebbeinu Shalom sometimes in the history makes such dark periods. And he says the reason is because it's the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to bring the Gula. He wants to have Rachmanis on us, and this is part of his Rachmanis. We are not yet road to get to Geula. So the Rebbeinu Shalom makes a matzav of Tzorah Gdoila. And the Tzorah Gdoila is to awaken us, to arouse us to do tshuva. It's to arouse in us to daven with our hearts, pour out our hearts to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Ribono Shalom, Yomer L'Tzorasenu Dai, have Shin Rachmanis on us. And he says, this is what the Ribono Shalom has to Yisroel, and an opportunity. Are you going to rise and pray and daven with your heart from the Ribono Shalom Ma'amakim Kwasich Hashem? Are you going to recognize that everything is in the hands of the Ribono Shalom? The Ribono Shalom orchestrated this for a purpose, because he wants us to rise and daven for these people. That's one part of it, but there's another part, and that is to be mishtatif in their tzar, to feel their pain, to imagine it if it would have happened to you, and to shower them with rachmanis in every way possible, to give from yourself beyond and above what you could think you could give, to give large sums of money. If you could afford $1 million, you give $1 million. There's no limit to what your achrayus is at such a moment. If it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, every person, the free koichai, should rise to the challenge. But he explains, and he says the Ribono Shalom wants to see if we'll show our rachmanis to these people, to the Klal Yisrael that's b'tzoreh, it should be like my personal tzoreh. Then the Ribono Shalom will shower us back with rachmin. If we bring out from ourselves koiches that we might not even know that we possess, koiches that I'm ready to do whatever it could take, whatever I can do. The Magi told the Beis Yosef, if you would realize how much tsar the Ribono Shalom has when we are b'tzar, then you wouldn't be able to eat or sleep, and you wouldn't be able to rest. We would go around in the whole day feeling the pain. The Ribono Shalom, Chaim talks all about this, that we have to remember the Ribono Shalom Tsar Ashchina. The Ribono Shalom doesn't want to be in Golus, and he doesn't want to pay Yiddin, but he does it for B'tuvah U'Barachmov, that to remind us, let us rise to this Yisroel, and Baruch Hashem, the people in Toronto have always responded very, very warmly. They were always the leaders in showing the paving the way for everybody else. Those people that will come out, that Mil Hashem Eloi, and will be the ones that come out first, they're Noitel Schar Kulam. Let us rise in Toronto and show what we can do, and Be'ezer Hashem, the Ribono Shalom, will pay you all back, Kefil B'Kiflayim, with Brocha and Atzlocha and Nachas from the Kinder, but Be'ikr, that we're going to save the Ebershter's Kinder, these are Yiddin that were Mamish, Moise, Nefesh for Yiddishkeit. We have the opportunity that we were given. The Chafetz Chaim used to explain, what does our door have in comparison to previous doors when they were greater? But he says, because there's so much tsar and so much sorus in the ikvus of the Mashiach, and if you could rise and do and take away the tsar and the tzorah from Kollel Yisrael, from the Ribono Shalom, we will be zeicha to be gebenched, and maybe we will be that door that will be zeicha to be korev, to be as Mashiach tzidkenu b'mheira v'yameinu.
Final speaker, I spent a lifetime helping Yiddin in this part of the Olam that is now in tremendous tsar. We're especially happy to see him back at the helm of the Agudas. It's a pleasure to call on Reb Shlomo Noach Mandel.
That's okay.
Firstly, having the opportunity to speak in front of such a chashva crowd. Dr. B'Shus, Maranon Rabbanon Rabbasai, Frat, the rosh Kollel Shlita, and the Rav Mishmar Chaloi Shlita, Kala Kala Kodesh Hazeh, gives me an opportunity also to say thank you to the Olam for all of the tefillas during the time that I wasn't well, and I feel that the tefillas continue to carry me, and as Fima said, all of us just play a little role in everything that's going on. But I ask you to keep us all in your tefillas continually, that we should be matzliach in this very special time in the history of Klal Yisrael, and so Kadam Kol, thank you. Today I was in the Kollel. I've been able to go upstairs the Rosh Kollel Shir already for a few months, but today was the first time I was actually able to walk upstairs to the Kollel to daven mincha there, and it's also an opportunity to give shvach b'Adar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I continue to get better. And the Rosh Kollel taught us that how is it that tefillas help l'chara, that a person is not allowed to be misrapa. A person who's sick isn't allowed to be misrapa with divrei Torah. The Rosh Kollel explained to us that it's not magic, but when a person says Tehillim, like we heard from the Rosh Yeshiva Rabbi Yitzchok, he rises to a new level. If he puts himself, like the Rosh Kollel says, Bani Tefillah, he becomes a chelik of the Tefillah itself. So as a result of being part of it, so he becomes a different person and really has a right to talk to Rebbeinu Shalom. Not the pshat, he says Tehillim, and somehow that helps. Saying Tehillim and meaning it and having it become a transformational experience, so that's how a person becomes a better person. And like the Rosh Yeshiva Yitzchok said, that's a perspective we have to have b'chal when we see the tsaros. It's not the pshat that because there's a tzara we have to daven. Like it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is misavel tfilasim shel tzadikim. One of the reasons Rebbeinu Shalom brings the tzara, we don't understand the cheshbonos of Rebbeinu Shalom. We're living in unbelievable times. Unbelievable. We're witnessing in front of ourselves on a day-to-day basis, and we don't know where it's going to lead us. But one thing is for sure, the reason that the Rebbe Shalom is bringing us is he wants to react. He wants to see how we're going to react. He's misaveh for our tefillas. And among the nisim and the flows that I'm personally seeing is the response Taka the Klal Yisrael has. Taka been involved a little bit, the privilege of working with big tzaddikim, tremendous siyata d'shmaya from the Kollel Yisrael, for whom this part of the world is also not a secret. They're involved constantly. They come in, they visit, and certainly in their schus of the Rosh Yeshiva and the Rebbes who constantly came to visit us in those lands in Russia and Ukraine, that they planted the seeds of Hatzlacha and continue to do so. And it's that siyata d'shmaya that continues to guide us. And being involved for so many years, I don't think I've ever seen a situation where all of Klal Yisrael is so interested. Those people, maybe they've heard of Ukraine, they don't think about Ukraine today. It's headline news. And the cities, and we hear about the bombings, and we just heard from Mosho Fima about Mariupol. We had a family here in Toronto, actually, that went back to Russia, and she was from Mariupol. And a ganze story. But now we all know about these places. We know and we hear about it. And raising money to be able to have a summer camp in Moscow, it's Kriyas Yamsuf. And now in 1 hour, both financially and with their tefillas and with their care and their concern, is something that I certainly have never seen. People are Avrechim that you're sure are poor are giving thousands of dollars, and the Gevirim are giving hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some are giving even million. It's unbelievable, the outpouring, and one can't help but think that that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. He created the need for Atzalas Nefashos, and the need doesn't make any sense either, if you think about it, because in the good old days, a bus ride, let's say from Kiev to the Belarusian border, would be $15. So now the ride is $300, but that's the inexpensive cost of getting over the border. And the rest of the cost we can't even talk about what it means. Rabbi Shalom created these high values, maybe because he wants to see how we respond. So he asked me to go over a little bit what exactly has happened so far. I'm not 1,000% sure of all the numbers. Like I said, I'm just a little cog over here. And I daven constantly that I shouldn't be nichshol, not the kaspei hatzibur, and not in any of the other elements of this Agudas HaKodesh. So, but this is what they tell me, and this is what we've counted from. You get these little tzetlach, how many people cross the border today. You get it from a number of different people, and you have to put it all together. So this is what they told me today from all these tzetlach, that so far 30,000 people have been evacuated. The amount of food that are being served in refugee centers now involves about 20,000 individuals, and you make a cheshbon of what it costs to feed in normal circumstance, $10 a person, so you're talking about $200,000 a day. We have one center in Odessa, which is Mamish Tardik, place where Steinman visited, and it's a place with yeshivas and Kollel and yeshiva ktanas. It also has an orphanage. There are 232, I think, orphans. What does it mean, orphans? Not necessarily that they don't have either parent, but maybe they only have one parent or a dysfunctional parent. They're wards of the state. They belong to Ukraine. But to take them over the border is a whole operation. You can't be masakin them. You can't do it in a sakana. You have to get them the right papers. Understand that it costs $1.5 million just to get them safely into Romania, and now the cost to be able to keep the enterprise going is $75,000 a day. Locations for where refugees are, some are still in Ukraine. The Hainu in Kiev, and now they call it Lviv. It used to be Lvov, and before that was Lemberg. In Chernovitz, and Uman, and Vinitsa, Mezhevish, Parmishalan, Yampel, Belz. Names maybe sound familiar in the Carpathian Mountains. So they're still there. Many of them, men between the ages of 18 and 60, aren't legally allowed to leave. So some of the families have gone over, and they're still there. And we have to figure out how to get them food over there. In Turkey and Hungary, Poland, Romania, Germany, Hungary, Austria, and big centers in Moldova, because that's one of the places where the border crosses. And if you can believe it, up until this week, the community of Moldavia was not a religious community, was serving the refugees treifa food. So you had to negotiate and pay so that they should be able to serve kosher food. And some of the other non-religious agencies have hotels, and they also agreed to start serving kosher if we pay the difference between kosher and treifa food for the people. And we haven't begun to work properly on the whole idea of resettling in Eretz Yisrael for those that are going to Eretz Yisrael, to make sure that they don't wind up by their non-religious uncle in some Art Prachna place where there aren't Fima Yiddin, and all of the work over the last 30 years shouldn't Kollel go larik. So thousands of families will have to be settled. So when this whole thing started, we thought, how much could this cost already? Even talking about 5 million was beyond our hasagas. But now the Askanim are saying that even 50 million might not be enough. That's the sort of tzarech that, again, I'm one small person, a lot of very, very big, great people. The Moetzes Gedolei Torah met a few times already, and this Rosh Kollel was part of the conversation already a couple of times. We had a number of pikuach nefesh shilas already that we had to share with the Rosh Kollel. But they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, so I'll close just by introducing a short video that we made just an hour ago, but maybe it describes one small picture. And I'll begin by saying that 2 weeks ago, Friday afternoon our time and Friday night in Ukraine, somebody needed some funds to be able to take people out. His name is Hill. He's a Breslover, and he used to live anyway until 4 weeks ago in Kiev. He's a person, part of the Kehillah there. He runs Hatzalah for Ichud Hatzalah in Ukraine. Maybe some of you have heard of him. And he needed some money to be able to evacuate somebody with one of his ambulances. We had a whole halachah on how do you get funds over to him when it's already Shabbos over there. And I called him up and I tried to reach Rosh Kollel. I just told him before to ask, are you allowed to say good Shabbos? How are you? When you're talking, it's Friday and over there it's Shabbos. What's the right approach? Do you makatzer? Can you make him feel better and talk a little bit? But in any case, Hillel just Parshas Truma, just a few weeks ago, made a KINNUS in Mezhevish, the Baal Shem HaKadosh, and he brought children from all over Ukraine to spend Shabbos together. So just 5 weeks ago, it was quite normal that children from Odessa, like from Toronto, they go to Montreal. So from Kiev and Odessa, they'll go to the Baal Shem HaKadosh and spend their Shabbos Isachtus Ki'ilu in Mezhevish. So this little video I put together is going to start with that. You're going to see a little bit about that, and then the next Motzei Shabbos, there's a film of Avos Tabanim and the Bnei Torah and the children, the orphans, some of them in Odessa, dancing after Havdalah Motzei Shabbos in the shul, and then you'll see what it is to leave the shul, to walk away from the shul. Take out all the Sifrei Torah from the shul and evacuate Odessa, a Kehillah with 1,500 from a Yiddin plus, but just part of that Kehillah, and to walk away from the shul and what that felt like for them. I had occasion to tell one of my chaverim from Kiev. He said, we built so much over 35 years, spent so much money on building beautiful Bate Knesses. He himself just finished a shul, this chaver of mine, Karlin Stelin, in Kiev. They just redid an apartment, a beautiful shul and a mikveh, and it's all gone, just like that. It just evaporated. And I told him, what Chazal say by Mizmor La'asaf, that where it says Kina mi boy Elokim ba'ogoyim nachlasecha, but you say Mizmor, and you say because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is shayfach chamos al eitzim v'avanim, and not on people. Baruch Hashem, you're alive, and your children are alive, and the yeshivas are alive. But it was a terrible feeling to walk away from the shul. And then you'll see Hillel again, Hillel Kain, last Purim, a few days ago, reading the Megillah in the empty shul in Odessa and what that was like. And on the other hand, it's going to end with a little clip of the Kehillah of Odessa, alive and well, Baruch Hashem, now in a city called Neptun in Romania on the Black Sea. They evacuated, they escaped there, and they're trying to rebuild their lives there for a few weeks because they don't want the people to make life-changing decisions when they're sleeping in a room, like he said, in a cot with 50 other people, and they just want to run wherever they can go. They're trying to make it menschlich for them, and the classes are back in session for the children, and the Kollel are back in session, the Asifa is back in session, and you'll see what Havdalah was like 2 nights ago, Mr. Shavitz in Odessa. So that's my little speech. I want to say finally that we all feel we want to do what everybody wants to do. So one of the things that they've decided to do here is that today there's a whole Kutza of Askanim in Romania, Moldavia, and tonight in Vienna. And they say that Pesach is going to be very difficult to get the kosher food that they need. And we try to solve that problem in a big way, but in a small way, they're going to start collections here in the schools for people when they go shopping for Pesach. They should buy maybe a little extra and bring it to the school. Is that right? For how many weeks is that for? Thursday and Friday, when food has to be in school, they got cheap air freight. Somehow they got a discount on the air freight, and so they're going to be boxing it so everybody can feel that they're being mishtatif. So, Agudas Baruch Hu should help. We all know that big things are happening, and like Reb Yara said, that if we rise to the occasion, we manage to hear the footsteps of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Rabbi Shalom has a big plan for us. Like Rabbi Yitzchok said, when it's the darkest, that's a sign that it's mamish holding mamish by Boker. This Boker should be good. Amen.
Teile Hawaiian, du so mich kauft, aber wollen soll er, das schöne Schabes in Messsage, du Lembar Shemtov, mit die Yalda Bar Shemtov, mit der Bar Shemtovs Kinder, das kommen zurück zur Jüdischkeit. Agitavo.
Eliyahu Hanavi zachor latov, 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 Eliyahu Hanavi.
Hi everyone, just the last update before we leave. Standing in the synagogue, the lights are off, the Sifrei Torah have all been taken on the buses with us. We've loaded up all the buses here outside the synagogue of all the community members. The buses in the orphanages are all loaded and ready to go. We're about to leave on a very long journey, not knowing when we'll be back. And it's pretty emotional for everyone. We'll be in touch from the way and just keep praying that everything goes well. Thanks.
למעשה, אני אורח פה, ich bin den ganzen Agas, du, mit jetzt gern die kleine Megille. In der Arz weint, איפה הכל הקודש, sind alle Plitim geworden. Die Kehle von der Rav Kruskal, in der Rav Bakst. 1500 Menschen sind du jede Jahr, Baruch Hashem, so gegangen, alle auf Rumänien. Ich bleibe da bis morgen, mit fahren weiter. Euer Rebbeinu Shalom, bringt sie Mashiachen.
ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לחול.
Was Versayim Achle Moisar. I feel any extra word is totally not necessary after such a moving evening of Chizuk of Yisroel. Nonetheless, I want to just conclude, echoing the droshes that we've heard tonight, with one final thought. During the Holocaust, there was a great tzaddik and rebbe in the Krukover ghetto called Reb Shem Zalashitzer, Zecher Tzaddik v'kadosh livrocha Hashem yinkoim domoy. And when he saw how the noose was being tightened around the neck of Klal Yisroel in Eastern Europe, he made a couple of announcements. First, he told his Hasidim not to sing Zemiras Shabbos anymore. We'll say the words. We can't sing in such a tkuf and such an era. And then he said something else. What's the eitzah? What do we do to counteract this midas hadin metucha? So he said and he suggested and he told all his Hasidim and all shoyme likchoi, the more chesed we can get involved in, the more we can think of our brothers and our sisters, the more we can do for Anoche Yid, that in itself will counteract and overpower the Midas Hadin. The way how we get the ability to overturn Din is to infuse the world with Rachamim. The more Rachamim we have, the more Rachamim we display, the more Rachamim we show causes that the world changes. And the world becomes a place that permeated with Rachamim. And that's the skula, how to overpower Midas Hadin. When we're here tonight, God, belev echad, to donate, to help, to pledge for acheinUkraine kol beis Yisroel, we have to understand and recognize it's not only to help, it's not only that our dollars will go to feed those heilige Yiddin, those precious Yiddische kinderlich, but there's something a lot deeper, more profound. When we are ready to donate and share, we're going to be bringing in Rachmim v'chasadim into this world. And that in itself could be the source of the Gula Kroiva. Let me share with you a short story. The great Kalina Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik v'kadosh levrocha Hashem yimkoim domoy, Rav Ruam Elimelech of Kalin, was in Eretz Yisroel in the summer of 1939. And he already knew what's taking place and what's going to happen there in Europe. He went to the Mekoimes Hakdoshim and he cried and he begged. And when he left those places, he said, I thought I'll be able to overturn this decree, but I wasn't successful. And then the Hasidim asked him, if so, Rebbe, stay with us here in Eretz Yisrael. Why are you going back? L'Eretz Hadamim. And he got up from his chair and he went to this Forum Shafar and he said, I want to show you something that it says in a certain sefer. And this was a shaila amongst Gedolei Yisrael throughout the Holocaust, which is not our topic tonight. But he was talking about and the sefer reads as follows. Somebody that he has a community and he just leaves them on their own. He's just interested in saving himself and he's not interested in saving others. And of course, there was other calculations and cheshbonos by different tzaddikim. But he said, in a certain sense, HaKadosh Baruch Hu soinoi. The Eibishter hates a person that lives a life that revolves against himself. And then he says, I wilt machen, as der Rebbeinu shel Olam soll mir Feind haben. You want to make that the Eibishter should hate me? I'm going back to my town. I have to be there for my kehillah. I have to be there for my people. What's the understanding of this sharp statement? Perhaps the understanding is with the famous words of the Rambam, where the Rambam tells us, why do we have to give tzedakah? Why do we have to care about Tanakh Yid? Writes the Rambam, because all of us are called brothers. Every single Yid is an ach. V'im ach lo yerachem alo ach, mi yerachem alov. If a brother won't have mercy on a brother, who will have mercy on him? Says the Rambam, where do I get this from that we are brothers? Is it a pasuk in Chazal Nach? Says the Rambam, yes. The pasuk that reveals to us that every single Yid is a brother is deduced from a pasuk in Parshas Re'eh, wo steht, Banim atem la'Hashem Elokeichem. We are sons of the Eibishter. If we are considered Banim to the Eibishter, then it follows on to that we are brothers one with the other. The more we invest in feeling that we are brothers, the more heart, the more hergish, the more tsar that we feel as brothers, unified and connected. The more the Eibishter treats us like Banim atem la'Hashem Elokeichem. The ultimate Rachmanis of the Eibishter is expressed Karachem of Albanim Yerachem Hashem Aleinu. What do we do to deserve the Eibishter's mercy, the Eibishter's Rachmanis, the Eibishter's compassion? When we come here tonight and we feel Ach Yerachem al Ach, Achois merachem al achois. When we feel their tsar, we feel their pain, and we are ready to help, that evokes rachmesh, that opens up the gates. In the Lamas Elyoinim, and the Eibishter says, look how they're treating each other. They're treating each other like brothers, as we've heard, that we've never met, we've never seen, and we don't know who they are. But one thing we know, that we are brothers, bound together in a kesher elyon doiraisa, inseparable. The Eibishter says, when I see your achva, then I treat Klal Yisrael as banim, and then we will be zoiche through our mercirus nefesh of avas achim to karachem of albanim yerachem Hashem aleinu. And we will daven acheinu kol beis Yisrael hanesunim batzario b'shivya hoimdim bein beyamu bein beyamokim le'mitihim mitzar l'rvacha u'mishubed legilam afeila l'oira hashta ba'agolav izman koriv v'noimar amen.
Ukraine's independence came in 1991. The Soviet Union had collapsed, and as it splintered, a number of new nations emerged. Ukraine was one of the largest. Its population was 52 million. It was 1,200 kilometres from east to west, and with that land came a huge farming sector, worth over $20 billion now, or close to £15 billion. And as democracy moved east, this was a moment of optimism. In 1991, Ukrainians celebrated their first election. The US called it momentous. One voter described a flowering of our soul. But for all the enthusiasm, democracy couldn't change Ukraine's geography or its history. To the east was Russia. To the west was Poland, Slovakia and Hungary. All three had communist pass. By 2004, all three had joined the European Union. Being pro-Russia or pro-Europe became a fundamental dividing line in Ukrainian politics, and months later, we saw how. Amidst allegations of electoral fraud, what became known as the Orange Revolution began, and two men were the focus: Viktor Yanukovych, who was pro-Russia and who'd initially been declared the winner, and Viktor Yushchenko, here on the right, who was pro-Europe and would become president after a new vote. And while the outcome of that election was settled, relations with Russia were not. In 2010, there was a further twist. Yanukovych was re-elected, and then in 2013, he would take a decision with huge ramifications. Chris Morris reported at the time.
As EU leaders arrived for the Eastern Partnership Summit, something was missing. The centrepiece was supposed to have been the signing of an association agreement with Ukraine.
But it didn't happen. Under pressure from Russia, Yanukovych walked away from that deal with the EU, and another revolution would begin. There were weeks of protests and crackdowns, and in the end, Yanukovych would flee this country estate just outside Kiev and head for Russia. Watching from Moscow was Vladimir Putin. This was his cue to act. First, Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine. It's a peninsula on the Black Sea. Weeks later, pro-Russia rebels seized two regions in the east of Ukraine. Russia already divided Ukrainian politics. Now Putin was dividing the country itself. But the turn towards the West that frustrated him then remains now. One recent poll shows 68% of Ukrainians are in favour of joining the EU. Putin, though, sees Russians and Ukrainians as one people, a single whole. He says Ukraine is ancient Russian soil. That perception may explain this invasion today, but perhaps there's something else too. The 90s brought a surge of democratic optimism. To Ukraine's current president, this invasion is showing us what Putin thinks of that.
Putin started a war against Ukraine, against the whole democratic world. He wants to destroy my country. He wants to destroy our country. Everything we've been building, everything we live for.
That effort to build a nation began as Ukraine emerged from the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. Today, as Russia invades, Ukrainians are seeing the extent of Putin's resentment of what happened then and what's happened since.